The New York sky was covered in a layer of gray clouds that November morning, as Harrison Wells adjusted his Italian silk tie in front of the mirror. At 48, he was the picture of American success, CEO of Wells Enterprises, a multi-billion-dollar real estate empire with properties spread across the East Coast. His angular face and graying hair at the temples gave him an air of authority that intimidated anyone who crossed his path. "Mr. Wells, the list of defaulters is ready," Martha, his assistant, announced as she entered his office on the top floor of the company's skyscraper. The windows on the 78th floor offered a panoramic view of Manhattan, a constant reminder of the empire he had built. Harrison took the folder without thanking her. To him, Martha was simply doing her job. He quickly flipped through the pages, stopping at a specific address in the Queens neighborhood, 3742. "Maple Street still hasn't paid? This is the third month in a row." "Yes, sir. Ms. Chen claims to be experiencing financial difficulties following her husband's death." Harrison slammed the folder shut. "Hardship doesn't pay mortgages, Martha. Schedule a viewing. This afternoon." Harrison's chauffeur-driven black Bentley steered him through the bustling streets of New York. The transition from the glass and steel towers of Manhattan to the more modest buildings of Queens was like stepping into parallel universes. As he glanced at his smartphone, checking the stock market, Harrison remained oblivious to the changing urban landscape. To him, the city was just one big monopoly board. The building on Maple Street was a typical converted townhouse, with rusty fire escapes on the facade and weathered bricks. Harrison eyed the property critically. He had bought the building as part of a larger real estate development during the 2008 housing crisis. To him, it was just a number on a spreadsheet, but to dozens of families, it was home. As he climbed the creaking stairs to the third floor, Harrison could smell food being prepared in the various apartments. Curry, garlic, tomato sauce, the aromas of different cultures mingled in the air. When he reached apartment 3C, he adjusted his jacket, steeled his expression, and knocked firmly on the door. After a few moments, the door opened just enough to reveal the face of a woman in her 40s, with deep circles under her eyes and a wary gaze. Mei Chen immediately recognized the man in front of her. His face had often appeared in the business magazines her late husband used to read. "Mr. Wells," she said with a noticeable accent, opening the door wider. "Please come in." Harrison stepped into the small apartment, his critical gaze cataloging every detail of the cramped but meticulously organized space. The furniture was simple, some of it showing obvious signs of wear and tear. Family photographs and a few school certificates lined the walls. Nothing here matched the contemporary minimalist decor that predominated in his own penthouse. "Mrs. Chen, I'm here because," Harrison began, but stopped when he heard a soft mechanical hum coming from one of the rooms. His gaze followed the sound, and through a half-open door, he saw something that left him momentarily speechless. Sitting at a sewing machine, a girl of about 12 worked intently, her small hands skillfully guiding fabric under the needle. Even from a distance, it was possible to see the tiredness in her slumped shoulders, and in the way she occasionally rubbed her eyes. Beside her, piles of finished garments accumulated, forming a colorful mountain that contrasted with the paleness of her face. "Lily, we shouldn't have visitors right now," May said quickly in Mandarin, trying to close the bedroom door. The girl looked up, meeting Harrison's gaze. For a brief instant, something intangible passed between them. A child with adult eyes and an adult suddenly aware of his own insignificance. "What's going on here?" Harrison asked, his voice losing its usual firmness. "She should be in school, not working on a sewing machine." Mei Chen hesitated, her hands clasped together nervously. "Mr. Wells, please understand. Ever since my husband passed away in the construction accident 6 months ago, we've been trying to survive. The insurance hasn't come through yet, and Her voice trailed off. Harrison looked back at the girl who had gone back to work, as if the weight of the world were on her fragile shoulders. On the wall above her, a school certificate with her name, Lily Chen, marked her as a top math student. Beside it, a child's drawing showed 3 smiling figures, a man, a woman, and a child, under a bright sun, a portrait of a happiness that now seemed distant. "We need to talk," Harrison said finally, his voice strangely soft. What had started out as a simple charge for late rent was about to turn into something much deeper, something that Harrison Wells, with all his wealth and power, was not prepared to face. Harrison Wells was not born into wealth. That was a detail few knew, and one he rarely shared. The son of a math teacher and a nurse from a working-class neighborhood in Boston, Harrison grew up watching his parents work tirelessly to support their family of 4. The turning point came when, at age 19, he lost both his parents in a car accident, leaving him the caretaker of his 14-year-old sister, Caroline. With his parents' modest life insurance, Harrison dropped out of college and invested in his first property, a small rundown apartment that he renovated with his own hands. Necessity sharpened his business instincts, and soon one apartment became 2, then 5, then an entire building. With each new acquisition, Harrison became a little more distant from the young man he once was, building around himself a fortress of financial success. Now, sitting in the Chen's small kitchen, Harrison watched May brew tea in an antique kettle. Her movements were precise and economical, a reflection of a life governed by necessity. Lily had been persuaded to put down her sewing machine, but she remained silent, watching the stranger with curious, wary eyes. "Is schoolwork up to date?" Harrison asked the girl, trying to break the uncomfortable silence. "Yes, sir," Lily replied, her voice firm despite her evident shyness. "I'll study after I finish the orders." May placed a steaming cup in front of Harrison. "Lily is top of her class," she said with restrained pride. "Her science teacher says she has potential for a scholarship in the future." Harrison sipped his tea. It was simple but comforting. "What about sewing?" "I started teaching Lily when she was 6, May explained. "In China, my family had a small sewing workshop for generations. Here in New York, I got a job in a garment factory, but after her voice trailed off as she mentioned her husband's name. "After the accident, I was laid off because I had to miss too many days to take care of the funeral arrangements. We started taking orders for repairs and adjustments. It's not much, but it helps with the expenses." Harrison surreptitiously scanned the room, noticing details he had initially overlooked. A photograph on the bookshelf showed May and a man with a gentle smile, holding a younger Lily on his shoulders. Li Chen, presumably. Beside it was a small altar with incense and a photo of the same man, now adorned with a black mourning ribbon. On the wall was a calendar filled with notes, most of them consisting of names, dates, and types of pieces to be delivered. "And the school allows Lily to work this way?" Harrison asked, knowing the answer. May looked down. "The principal understands our situation. Lily never skips classes and keeps her grades up. May hesitated. "She says she wants to be an engineer like her father." The mention of the deceased's profession made Harrison feel uncomfortably self-conscious. Li Chen could have worked on any of the many buildings owned by Wells Enterprises. "Which construction company did your husband work for?" she asked, dreading the answer. "Horizon Construction," May replied. "I was helping lay the foundation for the new shopping complex downtown. The scaffolding gave way." Harrison breathed a sigh of relief. Horizon was not one of his contractors. Still, relief was quickly replaced by guilt. Why should he feel better about not being directly involved in a man's death? Lily, who had been watching intently, suddenly asked, "Are you going to kick us out?" The question, asked with the disarming directness of a child, hit Harrison like a punch. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed. It was a message from his lawyer, confirming that a deal had been finalized to purchase a piece of land in Brooklyn for several million below market value. On any other day, the news would have made him elated. "No," he finally replied, putting the phone away. "I didn't come here to kick them out. But we can't pay the full rent right now," May said, dignity evident in her upright posture despite the circumstances. "I can offer half this month and maybe next month." Harrison held up his hand, stopping her. "We can find a solution." At that moment, looking at mother and daughter, Harrison suddenly remembered Caroline. His sister had majored in social work, a choice he had never fully understood. Now she worked with vulnerable immigrant families in Chicago. They spoke rarely, on special occasions and brief birthday calls. The gulf between them had grown as Harrison's fortune had grown. "Do you have children?" Lily asked, again disarming him with her frankness. "No," Harrison replied. "I've never been married." What he didn't say was that his longest relationship had lasted only 3 years, ending when Diane, his then-girlfriend, realized that she would always be Harrison's second love, behind his business. Before the conversation could continue, there was a knock on the door. May answered, returning with an elderly lady carrying a blue dress over her arm. "Mrs. Wong, I wasn't expecting you today," May said, clearly uncomfortable with Harrison's presence. "My granddaughter brought forward the engagement dinner. the lady explained before noticing the well-dressed visitor. "Oh, sorry to interrupt. Mrs. Wong is our oldest customer," May explained, taking the dress from the elderly woman's hands. "Lily, can you check the hem? I think we'll need to adjust it another inch or two." Harrison watched as Lily examined the piece with an experienced eye, despite her young age. There was something deeply disturbing and at the same time admirable about the girl's skill. "It will be ready tomorrow, Mrs. Wong," Lily promised with a polite smile that didn't quite reach her tired eyes. After the client left, the silence returned, heavier. Harrison realized he was at a crossroads. He could do what he always did, treat this situation as just another number on his spreadsheet, or he could, for the first time in decades, allow himself to see beyond the numbers. "Perhaps," he said finally, "we can discuss a more permanent arrangement for your situation." The look May and Lily exchanged, a mix of cautious hope and distrust, made Harrison realize how rarely people like him offered help without expecting something in return. And that realization bothered him more than he cared to admit. The next morning, sitting in his office overlooking the city, Harrison turned over the events of the previous day in his mind. The image of Lily hunched over her sewing machine refused to go away, causing him an unusual sense of unease. On his computer, he had 2 files open, the Chen's lease folder and a research paper on Li Chen, the deceased engineer. "Mr. Wells, the counsel is waiting in the meeting room," Martha reminded, interrupting his thoughts. Harrison nodded, closing the files. On his way to the meeting, he stopped in front of a framed photograph on the hallway wall. Himself and the late Robert Wells, his mentor and the original founder of the company, now 3 years dead. It was Robert who had transformed him from a mid-sized real estate investor into a mogul, teaching him the not always ethical ways of the corporate world. "The numbers justify the means, boy," Robert used to say. "Sentiment is bad for business." In the conference room, 8 executives waited. The agenda was clear. The Riverside Project, an ambitious plan to demolish an entire block of old buildings and build a luxury complex overlooking the East River. "As for the Maple Street building," said Philip Grant, Chief Operating Officer, pointing to a digital map projected on the wall, "we have 3 units still occupied that are resisting takeover bids." Harrison immediately recognized the address. It was the Chen's building. "Do we offer financial compensation?" he asked, keeping his voice neutral. "Yes, as per your authorization, 50% above market value. 2 accepted, but 3C, 4B, and 5A refused." 3C is the Chen family, Harrison observed. "Mother and daughter. Father passed away recently." "Who are the others?" Philip seemed surprised at Harrison's specific knowledge. 4B is a retired college professor, has lived there for 38 years. 5A is an elderly couple, both in poor health. "What's our next step?" asked Diane Ferris, the lead attorney, consulting her notes. "We could start the public benefit eminent domain process next week." Harrison felt a growing discomfort. "Public utility? We're building luxury apartments, not a hospital." "Technically, the project will include publicly accessible green spaces," Diane replied with a sly smile. "And we will create temporary construction jobs and permanent maintenance jobs." That's enough for the legal argument. Harrison knew this game well. He had played it countless times over the years. The line between legal and ethical was often blurred in the world of real estate, especially in New York. "I want a reevaluation of the project," he said finally. "See if we can preserve the Maple Street building." A stunned silence fell over the room. Harrison Wells had never shown concern for the preservation of old buildings before. His reputation was built on the opposite. "Preserve?" Philip repeated as if he didn't understand the meaning of the word. "Harrison, that would reduce the profit potential by at least 15%. We've already got the investors lined up. The city is pretty much on board." "I'm aware of that, Philip," Harrison cut in. "I just want all options on the table before we move forward." After the meeting, Diane followed him to his office. They had worked together for over a decade, and she was probably the closest thing to a friend Harrison had in the corporate environment. "What's going on, Harrison?" she asked, closing the door. "First, you're going to personally collect back rent, something you've never done in your entire career. And now you want to save a dilapidated building in the middle of our biggest project of the year?" Harrison hesitated. How could he explain something he didn't even fully understand? "I met real people yesterday, Diane. Not numbers on a spreadsheet. You always meet real people," she argued. "And you never stop doing what's necessary to make the business thrive." "A child is working instead of living his childhood," Harrison replied, his voice harsher than he intended. Because the system we've built allows it. Diane studied him for a moment. Is this about Caroline? Or about what happened to the Monroes last year? The mention of the Monroe case made Harrison stiffen. A family of 4 had been left homeless after a particularly aggressive eviction carried out by Wells Enterprises. The patriarch, unemployed and desperate, had taken his own life 2 weeks later. The company handled the case as it always did, a generous confidentiality settlement in exchange for perpetual silence. It's not about any of that, Harrison replied, though even he wasn't convinced. It's about doing better. That afternoon, contrary to his usual aloofness, Harrison drove to Queens again. This time he went not to the Chen's apartment, but to PS 118 Elementary School, following directions Martha had obtained. He waited in the car, watching the children file out after school. Lily was easily recognizable. She wore a school uniform that was slightly too big, probably to last longer, and carried a worn backpack. Unlike the other children who were chattering excitedly, she walked alone, her gaze fixed on the path ahead. Harrison followed her discreetly, keeping his distance. Instead of heading straight home, Lily walked into a laundromat a few blocks away. Through the window, he saw her putting on an apron and starting to fold clothes. A second job, he realized, feeling a surge of indignation. She was about to enter the laundry room when her phone rang. It was Philip. "We need to move forward with Riverside, Harrison," he said without preamble. "Japanese investors are nervous about any possibility of delay. I'm busy right now, Philip." "With what? What could be more important than $300 million in investment?" Harrison watched Lily through the glass, methodically folding sheets larger than herself. "I'll call you later," he replied, hanging up. At that moment, he made a decision. He walked into the laundry room, the bell on the door announcing his arrival. Lily looked up, her eyes widening in recognition and perhaps alarm. "Mr. Wells?" she asked, lowering the sheet she was holding. "Hello, Lily. Does your mother know you work here?" The girl nodded slowly. 2 days a week after school. Mr. Park is my father's friend and helps us out by letting me work a few hours." A middle-aged man emerged from the back of the store, his gaze flickering between Lily and the well-dressed visitor. "May I help you, sir?" he asked in English with a strong Korean accent. "Actually," Harrison replied, "I believe I can help you." While Harrison conducted a surprisingly tense conversation with Mr. Park at the laundromat a few blocks away, Mei Chen faced her own set of challenges. Sitting at the kitchen table, she examined an official envelope bearing the logo of Horizon Construction. It was her husband's 3rd life insurance denial, each letter more elaborate than the last in its legal explanation of why the company was not responsible for Lee's death. Clauses 17B and 22C clearly exempt the company from liability in cases where the employee failed to strictly follow established safety protocols. The letter read, conveniently ignoring the fact that preliminary investigations had indicated structural flaws in the scaffolding. Beside the envelope, a pile of bills grew as a silent testament to the increasingly desperate situation. Meeting Harrison Wells the day before had been unexpected, especially his apparent understanding. However, May had lived long enough to know that wealthy people rarely offered help without ulterior motives. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. "Mrs. Chen, this is Gloria Martinez from Social Services." May felt her stomach sink. The social worker had visited 2 weeks earlier, following an anonymous tip about child labor. "Yes, Mrs. Martinez. Did something happen?" "Actually, I'm calling to let you know that a foundation has contacted us about a scholarship program for underprivileged children. Lily's name was shortlisted due to her excellent grades in school and, well, due to her current family situation." May frowned suspiciously. "What kind of bag?" "Full coverage of school expenses, teaching materials, food, and a small monthly allowance. It's quite generous, actually. They requested an interview with you tomorrow." "What is the name of this foundation?" "Novo Horizonte Foundation." Seemingly new but with solid credentials. After hanging up, May stared at her phone. It was too much of a coincidence to believe. First Harrison Wells' unexpected visit, and now this mysterious bag. Her maternal protective instincts were on high alert. Meanwhile, across town, Caroline Wells was surprised to see her brother's name on her caller ID. They had spoken briefly at Christmas 3 months ago, the typical exchange of shallow pleasantries that had characterized their relationship in recent years. "Harrison, is everything okay?" she asked, worried that only an emergency would justify contact outside of holidays. "I need your help, Carol," he said, using the nickname he hadn't used since she was a teenager. 20 minutes and one explanation later, Caroline was more confused than when she'd answered. "Let me get this straight. You want to start a foundation to help children in child labor? The same Harrison who called my career choices unproductive sentimentality?" "People change," he replied without elaborating. "In 24 hours? Because we were on the same phone call yesterday, and you were too busy for more than a 5-minute conversation about the weather in Chicago." Harrison sighed. Even through the phone, Caroline could imagine him running his hand through his hair, a habit he had when he was uncomfortable. "I met a girl," he began, and then recounted his encounter with Lily in May. "She reminded me of you," he finally admitted. The same determination, the same resilience. Caroline was silent for a moment. "What do you really want, Harrison? Because I've known you long enough to know that a sudden conversion to philanthropy is not your style." "I want to do something that matters," he replied, his voice surprisingly vulnerable. "Something that isn't just adding numbers to a bank account, and simply helping this specific family isn't enough. It would just be a symbolic gesture. The problem is systemic." Caroline recognized in those words the brother she knew, always thinking on a grand scale, even in his moments of humanity. "I'm flying to New York tomorrow," she decided. "We'll talk in person." In the science lab at PS 118, Lily Chen was intently working on her science fair project. Unlike her classmates' papier-mâché volcano models or simple circuits, her project was ambitious, a water purification system using recycled materials. The inspiration had come from stories her father told her about his home village in China, where clean water was a luxury. "That's impressive, Lily," commented Mr. Abernathy, the science teacher, looking at the working prototype. "You made that yourself?" Lily nodded. "My father was an engineer. Her voice trailed off briefly. "He taught me a lot of things." The professor noticed the use of the past tense but chose not to comment. "You know, there are fellowship programs for young scientists. With your talent, you would be a strong candidate." "I don't have time for after-school programs," Lily replied, her expression darkening. "I need to help my mother." "I understand, but—" The teacher was interrupted by the bell indicating the end of the period. "Think about it at least. It would be a shame to waste your potential." As she gathered her materials, Lily reflected on her teacher's words. Ever since she was little, she had dreamed of being an engineer like her father, building things that would help people. But now, her reality was sewing clothes and folding sheets to ensure that she and her mother had a roof over her head and food. In the empty apartment, May tried to decipher Harrison Wells's true purpose. After some online research, she discovered that Wells Enterprises owned a plot of land adjacent to her block, part of a larger development project called Riverside. "So that's it," she muttered to herself. "He wants to remove us to his new venture." The sound of keys in the door announced Lily's return. May quickly closed the browser. "How was school today?" he asked, forcing a smile. "Normal," Lily replied, dropping her backpack on the couch. "Mr. Abernathy liked my project." "That's great, honey. Listen, I got a call about a scholarship for you. We'll have an interview tomorrow." Lily frowned. "Scholarship? I didn't sign up for anything." Apparently her teachers recommended her. "I can't accept it, Mom. We need the money I earn from the laundry and sewing." May hugged her daughter, fighting back tears. "You're a child, Lily. Your job is to study and play, not to support your family. Daddy always said that family takes care of family." Lily replied stubbornly. "He wouldn't want me to abandon you. Your father wanted you to have all the opportunities he didn't have," May countered softly. "He worked hard so you could dream big." Before they could continue their conversation, there was a knock on the door. May opened it, finding Mr. Park from the laundry room. "Mr. Park, is something wrong?" The man looked uncomfortable. "Ms. Chen, I need to talk to you about Lily." A man came to the store today. A rich American in an expensive car. May felt her heart race. "Harrison Wells?" "Yes, that's right, Mr. Park hesitated. "He offered me money to excuse Lily from work and allow her to attend an after-school program." "How much money?" May asked, her voice tight. "Enough to hire 2 full-time adults," Mr. Park replied, clearly impressed, "and promised clientele from his hotels for the laundry." Meanwhile, in Harrison's penthouse, a heated argument was unfolding between him and Philip Grant. "You're sabotaging the Riverside project because of a family you barely know?" Philip demanded, his voice raised with frustration. "The board is in a panic, Harrison. That's not like you." Maybe that's exactly how I should be, Harrison replied calmly. We've built our fortunes by replacing communities with luxury condos, Philip. Do we ever stop to think about the people we've displaced? That's the real estate business, Philip exclaimed. Urban evolution, gentrification, call it what you will, but that's how cities grow. You said so yourself. What if there is another way? What if we can develop without destroying? Philip stared at him as if he'd grown a second head. Who are you, and what have you done with Harrison Wells? He asked, only half joking. The question resonated more deeply than Philip could have imagined. Who was Harrison Wells anyway? The ruthless real estate mogul who built an empire at the expense of entire communities? Or the boy from Boston, who promised his late mother that he would take care of his sister and make a difference in the world? The answer, Harrison suspected, lay somewhere between these extremes, and finding it would be as challenging as any business negotiation he had ever conducted. The Wells Enterprises headquarters had never seemed so imposing to Harrison as it did that morning. As he walked through the marble lobby with Caroline at his side, his sister watched everything with a mixture of admiration and skepticism. It was only the third time she had visited the building in 15 years. So this is where the empire is run, she commented, as they rode up in the private elevator. Impressive but cold. Harrison noticed how his sister had changed. At 43, Caroline radiated a quiet strength that contrasted with his own aggressive leadership style. Working with vulnerable families had given her a perspective that he, isolated in his tower of power and privilege, had never had. What exactly do you expect me to do here, Harrison? She asked as they made their way down the 78th floor hallway, greeted respectfully by employees surprised by the presence of the CEO's rarely mentioned sister. I need your expertise in social services and family support programs, he replied, opening the door to his office. And frankly, I need someone who will challenge me when I'm thinking like a businessman instead of a human being. Caroline raised her eyebrows. Interesting request for someone who spent 2 decades building a reputation based on ruthlessness in business. Before Harrison could respond, Martha rushed in. Mr. Wells, the Chens have just arrived for the stock exchange meeting. They are waiting in conference room C. Thank you, Martha. Please tell Mrs. Chen that I was slightly delayed and will be there in 15 minutes. After the assistant left, Caroline crossed her arms. You didn't tell them that you're behind the foundation, did you? I believe they would react negatively if they knew the landlord who was trying to evict them was also offering help. Wait, you're trying to dump them and help them simultaneously? Caroline shook her head in disbelief. That's manipulative even by your standards, Harrison. It's not that simple, he said defensively. The Riverside project has been in development for years, long before I met the Chens. I'm trying to find a solution that benefits everyone. And what would that magic solution be? Harrison hesitated. I'm still working out the details. In the conference room, May and Lily Chen waited nervously. The elegance of the room, with its polished mahogany table and panoramic city views, only intensified their discomfort. Lily, in her carefully pressed school uniform, kept adjusting her tie, while May repeatedly checked the documents they had brought. Mommy, this seems strange, Lily whispered in Mandarin. Why would a foundation we don't even know be interested in me? Your teachers must have spoken highly of you, May replied, trying to sound confident. Just be yourself. The door opened, revealing a middle-aged woman with gray hair cut in a practical style and a genuine smile. Ms. Chen? Ms. Chen? I'm Caroline Wells, Director of Programs at the New Horizon Foundation. Thank you for coming. The surname didn't go unnoticed by May. Wells? Like Harrison Wells? Caroline smiled diplomatically. He is my brother, yes. Our foundation receives part of its funding from his companies. May tensed up. I see. So this meeting is related to our rental situation? Not at all, Caroline replied, sitting down. The foundation operates completely independently. We are here to discuss Lily's extraordinary potential. Meanwhile, back at the main office, Harrison was facing an equally tense situation of a different nature. Diane and Philip had requested an emergency meeting with a representative of the Japanese investors in the Riverside project. Mr. Takahashi is extremely concerned about the rumors of changes to the design, Diane explained. He flew directly from Tokyo to discuss it in person. Harrison sighed. He was about to enter a business battle he was not emotionally prepared for. Not today. Reschedule for tomorrow, he ordered. I have an urgent appointment now. Impossible, Philip replied. He's already at the front desk. Harrison, this is a $120 million investment. You can't just... I'll get this sorted out now, Harrison interrupted, standing up. And then I'll go to my other meeting. 2 fronts, as always. In the lobby, Hideki Takahashi waited with the rigid posture characteristic of an old-school Japanese executive. At 65, he ran one of Asia's largest investment funds and was known for his intolerance of last-minute changes. Mr. Takahashi, Harrison greeted him with a respectful bow. It is an honor to welcome you. Mr. Wells, the Japanese man replied coolly. I have heard disturbing rumors about changes to the Riverside project, changes not previously agreed upon. Please follow me to my office. Harrison led the visitor to the elevator. I understand your concerns and am prepared to discuss them openly. On the way, they passed the conference room where Caroline was chatting animatedly with May and Lily. Harrison noticed how his sister had quickly established a rapport with the two of them, a skill he had always secretly admired in Caroline. Lily was showing something in her notebook, probably the science project she had mentioned during her visit. Sounds like a productive meeting, Takahashi commented, following Harrison's gaze. Prospects? Not exactly, Harrison replied. A social program we're developing. The Japanese executive nodded thoughtfully. Corporate social responsibility. Important for public image these days. This casual remark by Takahashi sparked an idea in Harrison, a possible solution to the apparent impasse between his business and his newfound social conscience. At the office, Harrison didn't follow the defensive script Philip and Diane expected. Instead, he took a surprisingly transparent approach. Mr. Takahashi, the Riverside project is indeed evolving, not just as a real estate development, but as a model of socially responsible urban development. Philip shot a panicked look at Diane, who maintained a professional expression despite her surprise. Continue, Takahashi replied, his face unreadable. Wells Enterprises has always prioritized profit above all else, Harrison continued, ignoring Philip's desperate signals. But I'm beginning to realize that we can do better. We can create value for our investors while also benefiting the communities in which we operate. Fine words, Mr. Wells, but numbers matter. Absolutely, Harrison agreed, activating the digital screen on the wall. That's why I prepared a presentation comparing 2 scenarios for Riverside. Over the next 2 hours, Harrison outlined a revised vision for the project, one that included partial preservation of historic buildings, affordable housing integrated with luxury units, genuinely public community spaces, and a local development fund financed by a percentage of profits. The initial figures show an 8% reduction in the immediate profit projection, Harrison concluded. But the long-term return is potentially higher due to the sustained appreciation and tax benefits associated with the social components of the project. A heavy silence followed the introduction. Philip looked as if he were about to have a nervous breakdown, while Diane watched everything with growing interest. Finally, Takahashi spoke. In Japan, we have a concept called Sanpo Yoshi. 3 benefits. A good deal should benefit the seller, the buyer, and society. He paused. Your new plan reflects this principle, Mr. Wells. Does this mean that the Takahashi Group remains committed to the project? Harrison asked, keeping his tone professional despite the relief within. With some conditions, yes, the Japanese replied. I want direct supervision of social initiatives to ensure they are not just for public relations. Absolutely acceptable, Harrison agreed readily. After Takahashi's departure, Philip couldn't contain his frustration. You just redesigned a billion-dollar project during an impromptu meeting, without consulting the board, without detailed studies, and I saved the Japanese investment in the process, Harrison replied calmly. Sometimes, Philip, intuition is more valuable than spreadsheets. This isn't you, Harrison, Philip insisted. Something's going on. You're right, Harrison agreed, surprising his colleague. Something is happening. I'm evolving. The company needs to evolve too. Leaving Philip and Diane to discuss the implications of the changes, Harrison headed to the conference room where his sister was still talking to the Chens. As he approached, he could hear Lily excitedly describing her water purification project. The system can filter up to 5 liters per hour using only recycled materials, she explained enthusiastically. I thought about implementing it in rural communities without access to clean water. Impressive, Caroline commented. And you developed this yourself? Based on my father's teachings, Lily replied, her gaze briefly clouded with sadness. He said that engineering isn't just about building things, but about solving real problems. Harrison felt a lump in his throat. Li Chen, the deceased engineer, had seemed like a remarkable man, the kind of professional any company would want on its staff. "Sorry to interrupt," Harrison said, entering the room. May stiffened visibly, while Lily watched him with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "Mr. Wells," May greeted formally, "your sister was explaining to us about the scholarship program. I hope it's meeting your expectations," Harrison replied, exchanging a meaningful look with Caroline. "In fact," Caroline interjected, "Lily has extraordinary potential. We were discussing not only educational support but also how to develop her scientific project on a larger scale." "Really?" Harrison sat down, genuinely interested. "Tell me more about this project, Lily." As the girl explained her purification system with growing confidence, Harrison realized he was witnessing something rare: pure talent, motivated not by personal ambition, but by a sincere desire to improve the world, something he himself had lost along the way. "I have a proposal," he said finally, "for all of you." May's expression became cautious. "What kind of proposal, Mr. Wells?" "One that could change everything," he replied, knowing that the next words would mark a point of no return in his life. "But first, I need to be completely honest about who I am and what's really going on here." The silence that followed Harrison's revelation was thick enough to be cut with a knife. Machen stared at him with a volatile mix of emotions: indignation, betrayal, distrust, while Lily looked simply confused, her young face trying to process the implications of what she had just heard. "Let me get this straight," May said, her voice shaking slightly despite her effort to keep it steady. "Not only are you our landlord trying to evict us, but you're also behind this supposed charitable foundation? And now you want to help with some kind of proposal?" Caroline shot an "I told you so" look at Harrison, who looked unusually vulnerable under May's scrutiny. "I recognize how manipulative that sounds," he admitted. "And maybe it was initially. But things changed when I met you, when I saw Lily working on that sewing machine instead of enjoying her childhood." "We don't need your pity," May replied firmly. "We survived before you appeared, and we will continue to survive after." "It's not mercy," Harrison insisted. "It's recognition of value, of potential, of humanity that I ignored for a long time in my work." Lily, who had been silent, finally spoke up. "Why are you doing this, Mr. Wells? What do you gain by helping us?" The question, as blunt as only children can be, caught Harrison off guard. What was in it for him? Redemption? Peace of mind? A chance to reconnect with values he had abandoned in the name of profit? "It's not all about winning, Lily," he finally replied. "Sometimes it's about doing what's right." May snorted skeptically. "Rich men don't build empires by doing what's right." "Precisely my point," Harrison agreed, surprising her. "I built my fortune by following rules that I now question. That doesn't mean I can't use that same fortune and influence for something better." Caroline, sensing the rising tension, intervened. "Why don't we hear the proposal before we judge? If it is not acceptable, you are free to refuse it." After a moment of hesitation, May nodded stiffly. Harrison took a deep breath. "The Riverside project is being redesigned. Rather than tearing down the entire block, we'll be preserving some of the buildings, including yours, which will be renovated. Plus, I'm creating a genuine program, not a facade, to support young talent like Lily." "What about the overdue rent?" May asked pragmatically. "Considered paid," Harrison replied. "Actually, I propose a different arrangement. Li Chen was an engineer, correct? Specialized in structures?" May nodded, confused by the change of subject. "Wells Enterprises needs engineers with experience in socially responsible projects for our new direction. Posthumously, I would like to hire Li as an honorary consultant with credit for our future sustainable projects. This would come with financial compensation for his family and a full college scholarship for Lily when the time comes." The proposal left May momentarily speechless. Tears formed in her eyes, but she quickly held them back. "Why would I do that?" he finally asked. "Because talents like your husband's and your daughter's are precisely what our world needs," Harrison replied earnestly. "And because I have had a belated lesson in the real meaning of success." 2 days later, the commotion at Wells Enterprises headquarters reached unprecedented levels. A special board meeting had been called by Harrison, and rumors of radical changes at the company were circulating through every floor. "He's having a nervous breakdown," a senior director theorized in the hallway. "I hear you're getting a divorce," one manager whispered to another, apparently forgetting that Harrison had never been married. "Hostile takeover," one financial analyst confidently declared. The Japanese are taking over. In the boardroom, a dozen directors waited tensely. Some were nervously reviewing documents. Others were constantly checking their phones. When Harrison finally entered, accompanied not only by Diane but surprisingly by Caroline and, to everyone's astonishment, Hideki Takahashi, there was instant silence. "Ladies and gentlemen," Harrison began, "I appreciate your presence at this short notice. We are here to discuss not only the future of the Riverside project, but the future direction of Wells Enterprises as a whole." Over the next 2 hours, Harrison outlined a vision that left half the board excited and the other half horrified. A restructuring of the company with a focus on sustainable development, community preservation, and social responsibility. "This is madness," Richard Pearson, the oldest member of the board, finally interrupted. "You're proposing to reduce our profit margin in the name of doing good? Robert Wells is turning in his grave." "I disagree," Harrison replied calmly. "Robert was, above all, a visionary who understood the need to adapt. The world is changing, Richard. Investors are increasingly demanding social responsibility. Communities are resisting predatory gentrification. We can either lead this change or be left behind." "That sounds great in theory," said Janet Blackwell, Chief Financial Officer. "But where are the numbers to back it up?" Harrison smiled. "Excellent question, Janet." With a gesture, he activated the digital screen, where a meticulously prepared presentation showed financial projections for the next 5 years. As you can see, the initial transition requires investment and adjustment of expectations. However, from the 3rd year onwards, our model projects not only profitability comparable to the current one, but greater long-term stability and a significant reduction in costs with litigation and public relations. "And Mr. Takahashi supports this redirection?" asked another director, clearly skeptical. The Japanese executive, who had been silently watching, finally spoke. "The Takahashi Group not only supports, but will increase its investment in Wells Enterprises by 35%, on the condition that this new direction is implemented." The announcement caused an immediate stir. Takahashi represented not only his own group, but also had influence over a consortium of Asian investors who, collectively, could transform Wells Enterprises into a major global player. The meeting ended with a close vote. 7 in favor, 5 against the new vision. Harrison had won, but he knew the road ahead would be fraught with resistance and challenges. In the hallway after the meeting, Philip approached him. "You're playing a dangerous game, Harrison. Pearson and his group won't give up easily." "I'm counting on it," Harrison replied. "I've never trusted in easy victories." "Why are you really doing this?" Philip asked, his tone more curious than accusatory. "In all the years we've worked together, I've never seen you show the slightest interest in social impact." Harrison considered the question for a moment. "Do you have children, Philip?" "2 boys, as you know." "And you want them to live in the world we are building?" Philip frowned. "What kind of question is that?" "One I started asking myself recently," Harrison replied, before continuing on his way. Meanwhile, in Queens, a very different scene was unfolding. May had called a meeting with the building's other resistant tenants, the retired teacher from 4B and the elderly couple from 5A. In her small office, pouring tea into mismatched cups, she cautiously explained recent events. "I don't trust him," Mr. Rosenstein, the 82-year-old literature professor, said firmly. "Real estate tycoons don't change overnight." "I agree," May replied. "That's why I insisted on getting everything in writing, with legal guarantees." Caroline Wells, his sister, helped us review the documents with an independent attorney. "And you accepted the deal?" asked Mrs. Patel, adjusting her shawl. "I'm considering it," May admitted. "To be honest, I don't have many options. And if there's even the slightest chance that Lily can develop her potential without sacrificing her childhood, what does the girl think of all this?" asked Mr. Patel, who always had candy in his pockets for the children in the building. As if in response, Lily entered the room, returning from school. She carried with her not only her usual backpack, but a box of materials for her science project. "Mr. Abernathy said I can use the lab after school to develop my filtration system," he announced enthusiastically. "And guess what? Jennifer and Miguel want to help me." May noticed the difference immediately. The spark in her daughter's eyes that had been missing for months had returned. Not only that, but Lily had mentioned classmates, a rare occurrence since grief and adult responsibilities had begun to isolate her socially. "That's wonderful, dear," May replied, exchanging meaningful glances with her neighbors. Later, after the visitors had left, May found Lily in her room, not sewing as usual, but sketching modifications to her filtration prototype. "Mommy," Lily called, not looking up from her notebook, "do you think Daddy would be disappointed if I accepted Mr. Wells's help?" The question hit May like an emotional punch. Sitting on the bed next to her daughter, she carefully considered her answer. "Your father wanted you to have wings, Lily. He worked hard not only to provide for us, but so that you could dream without limits." She paused, fighting back tears. "I think he would be proud to see you create something that can help others. The source of the opportunity would matter less than what you do with it." Lily nodded thoughtfully. "Mr. Wells said Dad would have been a great member of his engineering team. Your father was brilliant," May agreed, allowing herself a nostalgic smile. "And you inherited his mind and his heart. So, can we accept?" May hugged her daughter, feeling the weight of the past few months finally begin to lift. "We can try. With caution, with dignity, but also with hope." That night, as Lily slept soundly for the first time in months, without the worry of waking up early to finish sewing orders, May wrote a letter. Not for Harrison or Caroline Wells, but for Lai. It was a habit she had maintained since her husband's death, telling him about events, seeking comfort in the imaginary dialogue, asking for advice that would never come. "Our world has been turned upside down again, beloved," he wrote. "But this time perhaps for the better. I still don't know if I can trust this man who came into our lives so abruptly, but I see something in his eyes, a recognition, perhaps redemption, and most importantly, I see our Lily dreaming again." The transition was not easy for anyone. 3 months after the board vote, Wells Enterprises found itself in the midst of a tumultuous transformation that tested Harrison's resolve daily. As expected, Richard Pearson led an internal resistance, questioning every decision and rallying allies against the company's new direction. One particularly tense morning, Harrison was in his office reviewing the revised Riverside plans when Martha announced an unexpected visit. "Caroline is here," her assistant informed her. "With Lily Chen." Harrison raised his eyebrows in surprise. Although her sister now officially worked as the director of Wells Enterprises' newly created Social Impact Division, it was rare for her to bring Lily into the headquarters building. "Send them in," he replied, quickly organizing the documents scattered across his desk. Caroline entered first, with her usual focused energy. Lily followed her, looking simultaneously intimidated and fascinated by the panoramic office. In the 3 months since their first meeting, the girl had changed subtly, still serious beyond her years, but with a new spark of youthful enthusiasm that had been lacking before. "Sorry for the unannounced visit," Caroline began, "but Lily has something important to share, and I thought you'd like to be the first to know." Harrison gestured for them to sit. "I'm all ears." Lily carefully placed a folder on the table. "My water purification project," she explained, opening it to reveal surprisingly sophisticated technical diagrams. "I presented it at the state science fair over the weekend." "And?" Harrison prompted, sensing from both their expressions that there was more to the story. "First place," Lily replied, allowing herself a small smile. "And the Massachusetts Institute of Technology wants me to participate in their summer program for young scientists." "MIT?" Harrison couldn't hide his astonishment. "Lily, that's extraordinary." The professor who evaluated her project was impressed not only by the technical ingenuity, but by the practical implications for communities without access to clean water, Caroline explained. "He said he rarely sees this combination of technical competence and social awareness in adult scientists, let alone a 12-year-old schoolgirl." The pride Harrison felt at that moment caught him off guard. It was pure, unconnected to personal gain or business advantage, simply genuine joy at someone else's success. "This calls for a celebration," he declared. "What do you say we invite your mother over for a special dinner?" Lily's smile widened. "She's downstairs, waiting. I wasn't sure the news was good enough to bother you." Harrison nodded, touched by the thoughtfulness. "Martha, please escort Mrs. Chen here, and cancel my lunch appointments." As they waited, Harrison noticed something different about Lily's design. "These diagrams look more refined than the previous ones. Mr. Abernathy helped me with the design software," Lily explained, "and Mr. Patel, our neighbor, suggested using activated carbon in the second stage of filtration. He was a chemist in India before he retired." "A cross-disciplinary collaboration," Harrison noted. It's learning early on the importance of diverse teams. When May arrived, Harrison was once again reminded of how 3 months could bring about significant change. Though still reserved, she no longer displayed the fear and distrust evident at their first meeting. She was well-dressed in a simple but elegant outfit, a result, Harrison knew, of the new job she had landed as a quality control manager at an ethical clothing company in Brooklyn, a position Caroline had recommended her for. "Mr. Wells," May greeted with a small bow. "I hope we're not causing any inconvenience." "Not at all. We are celebrating Lily's triumph. MIT is impressive at any age." Over lunch at a nearby restaurant, Harrison observed the mother-daughter dynamic with growing interest. There was a new lightness to their interactions, as if an invisible weight had been lifted. Lily talked excitedly about her project and future plans, while May watched her with a quiet pride that was almost palpable. "How's the new job going?" Harrison asked May during a moment of calm. "Challenging, but satisfying," she replied. "I'm using skills I haven't used since China and learning new ones. The owner values my experience with quality sewing. She says it's rare in the United States these days. And the nights are ours now," Lily added. "Mommy teaches me chess, like Daddy used to do." A phone rang, interrupting the moment. It was Harrison's, Diane calling for the third time in a row. With a sigh, he excused himself to answer it. "What's so urgent, Diane?" "Pearson has called a special board meeting for tomorrow," his lawyer informed him without preamble. "He has managed to persuade 2 directors who were with us to reconsider. If we lose one more vote—" "I understand," Harrison replied, keeping his voice calm despite the grave news. "I'll be back in 30 minutes. Returning to the table, he tried to hide his concern, but May watched him with discerning eyes. "Problems with your new business direction?" he asked directly when Lily turned away to look at the dessert. Harrison hesitated, surprised by his insight. "How do you know?" "I recognize the expression," May replied. Lee had the same look when he faced resistance to his construction safety ideas. Change is rarely welcomed by those who benefit from the status quo. The comparison with Lee Chen, a man Harrison had never met but for whom he had developed growing respect, struck a chord with him. "The transition has been more turbulent than anticipated," he admitted. "Some board members view our new direction as unproductive sentimentality." May nodded understandingly. "When we first came to the United States, Lee often said that Americans know the price of everything and the value of nothing." "A shrewd observation," Harrison agreed. "I'm belatedly learning the difference between the two." The next morning, the council chamber was tense. Pearson had arrived early, talking quietly with his allies. When Harrison entered, accompanied by Caroline and Diane, the whispers abruptly ceased. "Good morning, everyone," Harrison greeted with forced calm. "I understand this meeting has been called to reconsider our new strategic direction." "Precisely," Pearson replied bluntly. 3 months have been enough to demonstrate that this social experiment is financially unviable. Preliminary reports show a 12% drop in projections for the next quarter. Temporary and anticipated downturn in our transition plan, Harrison countered. The long-term benefits— "We are a real estate company, not a charitable organization," Pearson interrupted. "Our fiduciary duty is to our shareholders, not to our personal feelings about a girl at a sewing machine." The direct mention of Lily caught Harrison off guard. Clearly, Pearson had investigated his personal motivations. "Richard is right in one respect," Harrison replied, surprising everyone. "Our duty is to the shareholders. That's why I prepared this." With a gesture, he activated the digital screen, displaying a graph that no one expected. The performance of the shares of 5 large real estate developers that had adopted sustainable and socially responsible practices in the last 5 years, compared to those that maintained traditional approaches. As you can see, after an initial dip, these companies have consistently outperformed their traditional counterparts in stock appreciation, particularly in the wake of new environmental legislation and ESG requirements for institutional investors. A murmur ran through the room as the directors analyzed the data. "In addition," Harrison continued, "we have signed preliminary agreements with 3 new institutional investors that explicitly require sustainable practices. Together, this represents a potential capital injection of $480 million over the next 2 years. Pearson looked uncomfortable, but not defeated. Impressive numbers, but they ignore the costs of redevelopment of Riverside and other existing projects. That's why I prepared this as well, Harrison replied, moving to the next slide. A detailed cost-benefit analysis project by project. The presentation continued for another hour. Each of Pearson's arguments met with a meticulously prepared counter-argument. In the end, the vote was again tight, but this time with 8 votes in favor of maintaining the new direction, against 4 against. "You won this round," Pearson conceded after the meeting as the directors dispersed, "but I'll be watching closely. One significant stumble, and I'll be back with a vengeance." "I would expect no less, Richard," Harrison replied calmly. "The difference is that now I see your vigilance as an asset, not a hindrance. We need skeptical voices to keep us honest." Pearson studied him curiously. "You've really changed, haven't you? Or is it just a new disguise?" "Maybe a little bit of both," Harrison admitted. "I'm learning to reconcile who I was with who I want to be." In Queens, equally significant transformations were taking place. The Maple Street building, now part of Wells Enterprises' Renovation with Preservation pilot project, saw a steady stream of workers. Electrical systems were updated, plumbing replaced, windows insulated, structural improvements that maintained the building's historic character while providing modern comforts. In the Chen's apartment, Lily had converted the old sewing space into a small science lab. The sewing machine was still there, but now it shared space with microscopes, chemistry sets, and prototypes of her filtration system in various stages of development. "What do you think of this setup?" she asked Mr. Patel, who visited her regularly for informal scientific mentoring sessions. "Replace coal with zeolite here." "Clever," the old man commented, adjusting his glasses to get a better look. "Greater ion exchange capacity. Have you considered filter regeneration?" As they discussed filtration properties, May welcomed Caroline into her newly painted living room. The two women, initially connected by unlikely circumstances, had developed a genuine friendship based on mutual respect. "The documents for the MIT summer program are all in order," Caroline said, handing over a folder. "They're extremely excited to work with Lily." "It still feels surreal," May confessed. 4 months ago, I was afraid we were going to be evicted. Now my daughter is going to MIT, albeit temporarily. She's exceptional," Caroline observed. "Anyone could see that. My brother was just lucky to be in the right place at the right time. And the wisdom to recognize what he saw," May added. Her opinion of Harrison significantly evolved. Many would have ignored it. "Harrison is changing," Caroline commented thoughtfully. "And not just on the surface. He called me last night to discuss the possibility of creating a fund to identify young talent in underserved communities, inspired by Lily." May smiled. "Lee always said that a mind can change a business, but a heart can change the world. Maybe your brother is discovering that." Over dinner, the little Chen family celebrated the day's news. The summer program confirmed, and the building's new heating system finally installed. Chatting excitedly in a mix of English and Mandarin, they barely noticed the soft knock on the door. When May answered, she found Harrison Wells standing in the hallway, looking oddly hesitant for a man of his stature and power. "Sorry for the unannounced visit," he said. "I was just stopping by to check on the progress of the renovations and thought I'd, well, just say hello." May realized there was more to the visit, but she simply smiled and opened the door wider. "We were having dinner. Would you like to join us?" Harrison looked momentarily surprised by the invitation, as if he wasn't used to being included in simple family moments. "I don't want to be a bother." "It's no bother," May assured. "We have enough. And I'm sure Lily would like to tell you about the modifications to her design." After a moment's hesitation, Harrison accepted the invitation, stepping into the small apartment that had changed his life. As May served him a plate of authentic mapo tofu, and Lily enthusiastically described her innovations, Harrison felt something he had forgotten through years of negotiations and acquisitions: the simple joy of human connection, without hidden agenda or strategic advantage. And in that moment, he understood with crystal clarity that true growth didn't come from taller skyscrapers or bigger profit margins, but from the courage to let his heart, long protected by layers of ambition and pragmatism, finally open up again. Spring had given way to summer in New York, bringing sweltering days that tested even the best air conditioning systems. Harrison, in his impeccably tailored suit, stood in the lobby of MIT's Department of Environmental Engineering, occasionally checking his watch as groups of students hurried past, deep in conversation about equations and theories. "Mr. Wells," the familiar voice made him turn around. Lily was walking towards him, accompanied by a middle-aged woman with gray hair and a scholarly demeanor. "Lily," How was the first month of the program? Amazing, the girl replied, her eyes shining with genuine enthusiasm. We're working with nanotechnology to increase the efficiency of the filters. Professor Hernandez thinks we can reduce the unit cost by 40% if we replace. Lily went on to explain technical details with a fluency that impressed even Harrison, who had spent the last few weeks studying the subject so he could follow her ideas. The transformation from the shy girl he had met 6 months earlier was remarkable, not just intellectually, but in her poise, confidence, and cheerfulness. Mr. Wells, the teacher extended her hand after Lily finished her explanation. I'm Elena Hernandez, the program coordinator. Lily is an extraordinary student, a rare combination of technical brilliance and practical awareness of real-world applications. She mentioned your feedback on her project, Harrison replied. I'm just an interested layperson, but I can see the potential for impact. An enigmatic smile crossed the teacher's face. Layman, according to Lily, you've been discussing membrane filtration and sustainable composite materials with her. Harrison smiled, slightly embarrassed. Let's just say I've been doing my homework. Well, your interest clearly inspires you, and your foundation is doing an admirable job supporting young scientists from diverse backgrounds. After the teacher's farewell, Harrison and Lily walked across campus towards the restaurant where they had arranged to meet May for lunch. How's it been staying in the dorm? Harrison asked. Different, Lily replied thoughtfully. It's the first time I've been away from Mom for so long, but my roommate Zainab is cool. She developed an irrigation system for agriculture in drylands. Looks like you found people with similar interests. Yeah, it's weird. No one here thinks it's weird that I spend hours testing water flow rates or discussing biodegradable polymers. Lily laughed. At my regular school, they called me a nerd. Sometimes we need to find our place, Harrison observed. People who see our enthusiasm as a virtue, not a quirk. Lily studied him curiously. Have you found your place, Mr. Wells? The seemingly simple question struck Harrison with unexpected force. Had he found his place? 6 months ago, he would have answered yes without hesitation. Harrison Wells's place was at the top, running his real estate empire, accumulating power and wealth. Now he wasn't so sure. I'm finding it, he replied honestly. It's a process, not a destination. May was already waiting for them at the restaurant, elegant in a dark blue dress that highlighted her graceful posture. Over the past few months, Harrison had developed a deep respect for her resilience and dignity, and though he rarely admitted it even to himself, something more than simple admiration. How is our young scientist? May asked, hugging her daughter. Learning a lot. We need to discuss the possibility of implementing the project on a pilot scale. Professor Hernandez mentioned communities in Central America that could benefit. Over lunch, Harrison watched the mother-daughter interaction with a bittersweet feeling he couldn't quite name. There was something deeply moving about the way May encouraged Lily's independence while keeping their emotional connection intact. I have some news about the Riverside project, Harrison said as they waited for dessert. The first phase of renovation will be completed next month, 2 weeks ahead of schedule. Are the other residents satisfied with the improvements? May asked. Mostly. Mr. Rosenstein still complains that the new elevator is too fast. Harrison smiled. But Mrs. Patel told me it's the first time in 5 years she's been able to climb up to her apartment without her joints hurting. What about the investors? Still resistant? May asked insightfully. Harrison appreciated how she always got straight to the point. Some, yes. But the preliminary results are silencing a lot of the criticism. The project is getting positive media attention, and that has tangible value today. Harrison's phone vibrated. As he checked the message, his expression turned serious. Problem? May asked, noticing the change. Perhaps. Horizon Construction is suing the family of another deceased worker, using the same argument they used against you, alleging employee negligence. May's expression hardened. They keep avoiding responsibility for unsafe working conditions. It's more than that now, Harrison explained. My contact in the investigation department sent me confidential information. There's evidence that Horizon doctored safety reports after the accidents. May seemed to struggle with intense emotions. Does that mean they could have been forging documents in Lee's case as well? It's a possibility we're quietly investigating, Harrison confirmed. If proven, not only could his case be reopened, but potentially dozens of others. The impact of this revelation hung over the table. For Lily, it meant potential justice for her father's death. For May, it meant validation of something she had always suspected. For Harrison, it represented another step in his journey of transformation, using his power and connections not just for profit, but for justice. 3 days later, at Wells Enterprises headquarters, an extraordinarily tense meeting took place behind closed doors. Harrison, Diane, and 2 private investigators reviewed documents obtained through channels that bordered on legality. "These maintenance reports were clearly falsified," said one of the investigators, a former safety inspector. "The dates do not match the purchase records for the replacement parts." "Is that enough for one case?" Harrison asked. Diane shook her head. "Suggestive but not conclusive. We need more. An insider would be ideal," the other investigator commented. "Someone from within Horizon willing to testify." "Unlikely," Harrison replied. "Their corporate culture is based on loyalty and fear. No one would risk their career. Unless..." Diane left the sentence hanging thoughtfully. "Unless they no longer had a career to protect." A knock on the door interrupted the conversation. It was Martha. "Mr. Wells, Robert Pearson, and 2 members of the board are here. They insist on speaking with you immediately." Harrison sighed. It was only a matter of time. "Diane, keep the investigators going. We need this solid case before we act." In the lobby, Pearson waited with a victorious expression, accompanied by 2 notoriously conservative directors. "Harrison," he greeted coolly, "we need to discuss your recent interest in Horizon Construction. It has come to our attention that you are investigating them without board approval." "How exactly did this come to your attention, Richard?" Harrison asked calmly, leading them into an empty conference room. "I have my contacts," Pearson replied vaguely. "The point is that you're risking valuable business relationships without consulting the board. Horizon is a partner in 3 projects at the moment." "Partner who possibly falsifies safety reports," Harrison replied. "Are you comfortable associating our company with that?" "Unproven allegations," one of the directors interjected. "And even if they were true, it is not our responsibility to police contractor safety practices." Harrison studied the 3 men in front of him. "That's exactly what worries me. This mindset that ethics are someone else's problem, as long as our numbers are good. Your new moralism is compromising your objectivity, Harrison," Pearson snapped. "First the restructuring of Riverside because of an immigrant family, now this crusade against Horizon. What happened to the ruthless strategist we once knew? He found something more valuable than just profit," Harrison replied simply. The meeting quickly deteriorated after that, with veiled threats from both sides. By the end, it was clear that battle lines were being drawn within the company itself. "This isn't over," Pearson promised as he left. "The council will vote again next week, and I have reason to believe the outcome will be different this time." Alone in the room, Harrison reflected on the direction his life had taken. 6 months ago, men like Pearson had been his closest allies, sharing a vision of success based solely on acquisitions and financial statements. Now they saw him as a traitor to his class. His phone rang. It was Caroline. "How was Boston?" she asked without preamble. "Lily is flourishing at MIT. It's amazing to see her in her element," he replied. "And here things are getting complicated. Pearson, he and his allies are mobilizing for next week's meeting, and he somehow found out about our Horizon investigation." Caroline was silent for a moment. "Harrison, have you considered the possibility that this battle could cost you control of the company?" "Constantly," he admitted, "and I'm surprisingly at peace with it." "Who are you and what have you done to my brother?" Caroline joked, but her tone indicated genuine astonishment. "Let's just say I finally understand something you've been trying to show me for years," Harrison replied. "That success and significance aren't always synonymous." That evening, while working late at his apartment, Harrison received an unexpected visitor. The doorman announced that Mei Chen was waiting in the lobby. "Please ask him to come up," replied Harrison, surprised. Minutes later, Mei entered her penthouse apartment for the first time. Harrison noticed how her eyes took in every detail of the minimalist, luxurious space, so different from the modest comfort of her own home. "Impressive," she commented, "but a little cold," suggested Harrison. "I've been hearing that a lot lately." "I was going to say lonely," Mei corrected. "Too many square meters for one person. A constant reminder of misplaced priorities," Harrison admitted. "What brings you here so late?" Mei pulled a worn folder from her bag. "I found this among Lee's things. They're detailed notes on safety issues he identified during the construction of the Horizon. He was planning to present them formally, but Her voice trailed off momentarily. The accident happened before he could. Harrison accepted the folder with reverence, understanding the value of what he was receiving, not just as potential evidence, but as part of the legacy of a man he had never met, but whose absence had changed the course of his own life. This could be crucial, May. But I have to ask, why now? Why come to me directly instead of handing it over to Caroline or Diane? May hesitated, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that made his heart race inexplicably. Because I heard about what's going on at your company, that your position is under threat because of this investigation, an investigation you started because of us. It's not exactly like that, Harrison protested. It's about doing the right thing, regardless. That's exactly what it's about, May interrupted him gently. And that's why I'm here. Because if you're going to risk everything you've built to fight for justice for my family and others like ours, then I deserve to be by your side in that fight. The meaning of those words reverberated between them. For a moment, neither of them spoke, the silence heavy with unspoken possibilities. It's going to be a tough fight, Harrison finally said. Pearson and his allies will control at least 6 votes on the council. We need 7 to stay the course. Then we'll find the 7th, May replied simply. As they pored over Li Chen's meticulous notes together, Harrison felt a resolution crystallizing within him. What had begun as a moment of unexpected awareness in front of a child working at a sewing machine had turned into something much bigger. It wasn't just about Lily or May anymore, or even about personal redemption. It was about the kind of world he wanted to help build. The following week would be decisive not only for the future of Wells Enterprises, but for his very identity. And for the first time in his life, Harrison Wells was prepared to lose everything he had gained, because he finally understood what really mattered. The morning of the crucial board meeting dawned with stormy skies over Manhattan, as if nature itself were reflecting the tension that permeated the Wells Enterprises headquarters. Harrison, impeccably dressed in his navy blue suit, gazed out the window of his office at the city, aware that in the coming hours, the empire he had built over decades could slip out of his control. All set? Caroline asked, entering unceremoniously. As always in the last few months, her presence brought a combination of strength and clarity that Harrison increasingly valued. As far as we can be, he replied, turning to face her. Pearson confirmed 6 votes. We need 7 to maintain control. Janet Blackwell is our best hope as the deciding vote. The CFO? I thought she was firmly in the Pearson camp. She values stability above all else, Harrison explained. And I have some unplayed cards that might make you reconsider where true stability lies. Diane walked in, followed by Mei Chen, whose presence at the company's headquarters had become increasingly frequent in recent weeks as they worked together on the case against Horizon. Our moment has come sooner than we expected, Diane announced, handing Harrison a sealed folder. Former Horizon Security Director James Foster has agreed to testify. He was fired 3 months ago, apparently for questioning established protocols.